Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming back and joining me, giving me your attention and time. Now, I have to again warn you that today's video will be a crazy mixture of unsubstantiated gossip, relatively plausible stories, and one or maybe two true stories or verified gossip, depending on how far I get today. So instead of a long introduction, let's just get right into it. Okay, now first and foremost, I hinted about this in a previous video, but I want to know, and I'm sure that once the British and Canadian people hear this, they will also want to know. Yes, indeed, if this is true, I'm sure we all want to know why Harry is reported to be staying in that apartment in Millionaires Row in New York, allegedly more often than in his own Montecito home. Now, okay, I'm one of the naysayers who does not even 100% believe that Harry owns that property in Monte's shit show. But never mind, we'll go into that topic again for like the 10th time sometime soon. So let's get to that New York apartment, because God alone knows how sick and tired I am of being lied to. You know, I believe that when or if somebody lies to you, it is because, number one, they have no respect for you, or number two, they think you are stupid, or number three, both. So I personally want the truth. Okay, so let's get back to the original question. Why is the likes of TMZ reporting that Harry has semi-moved into that 6 million New York City apartment, which was allegedly bought by the Canadian government in the name of King Charles, the monarch, to accommodate Canada's Consul General? I mean, is it even true? Because if it is true that it was bought by the Canadian government for the Consul General, then why is Harry staying there at all? I mean, by staying over there, he is in fact having his accommodation and security paid for by the Canadian government with the Canadian people's tax money. Now, of course, there's the option that TMZ is just spinning a BS story, but there's also a third story which has been poking its head out for a couple of years. But to date, the palace has not once replied to inquiries whether with a lie or half-truth or the truth. You see, the palace, whether it's the courtiers or the king, just don't think it is necessary to answer the questions. They feel so superior that they owe the plebs nothing. The fact that whether the sovereign grant or the Duchy of Lancaster, every bloody cent comes from the citizens of the United Kingdom has completely slipped their minds. Okay, so before I get angry again, let's continue with the third option. It is said, and I can tell you that what was said came from an ex-British diplomat. And let me add that finally I was also taught a new term, which I must admit I have indeed heard before but never bothered to find out what it really means, and now I have finally been educated. Now here is an example. Harry's home in Montecito was bought in a trust, and in 2021 over into 2022, I launched an investigation with an accountant and a retired senior banking official into the true ownership of 76 5 Rockbridge Road, Montecito, which is, as you may know, Harry and Meghan's home. And no matter the expertise, we could not find the human, the blood and guts behind the trust. Now, I must say, before you all jump on some kind of bandwagon, everything we did was kept within the law strictly, and the address was already in the media. Anyway, the reason why we cannot find the humans behind the trust is because it is a blind trust, something accepted and used in both the United Kingdom and the United States, and which caused such a scandal and controversy in Britain in the late 90s that it was suggested it be outlawed in Britain. Now, blind trust is used when the creator of the trust do not want the beneficiary or beneficiaries or very much anyone else to be aware of the specific assets in the trust. I can give you a few examples, but I am in a bit of a rush, so we'll do that some other day as well. But basically, politicians and others like kings and queens, religious leaders, etc., often place their personal assets into blind trusts to avoid public scrutiny and accusations of conflicts of interest when they direct government funds to the private sector. So just a general, absolutely imaginative example. The king receives money from the Duchy of Lancaster and the sovereign grant. The Duchy of Lancaster's income comes from, in my opinion, about 90% from rentals. And who pays those rentals? The people. The same applies to the sovereign grant. The sovereign grant is calculated as a percentage of the profits of the Crown Estate. Now, where does the Crown Estate get its money from? Most of the money, most of the income are from rentals. Now, who pays those rentals? The people. So when the king spends this money, say in Romania, which we know he did, I mean, that's a fact, we all know about it, or Germany or France or India and the United States of America, of course, he would not want you and me to know about it or be able to find out about it. So the properties belonging to King Charles in his private capacity, whether bought or inherited, will never be registered to say Charles, Philip, Arthur, George, Windsor. No way, Jose. Properties he owns privately will instead be registered in a blind trust. So people like you and me cannot say things like, oh, while there are over 3,000 homeless in Cornwall, the prince goes and buys a huge estate in Romania for reportedly £400,000 in 2006. Now, the true amount is obviously unknown. This is just a guess by one of my friends, okay? Anyway, it is done for this and other reasons, and could very well also be the case with the Montecito home, for all we know. The supposed mortgage may just have been a red herring, and I'm saying this because now that I'm looking again, I cannot find a bond or mortgage registered over 765 Rockbridge Road anymore. Do you think Harry or Harry and Meghan could manage to pay off a 9 million bond or mortgage in 2 years? Well, maybe, but not likely. Anyway, I'm constantly going off topic today, so back to a suggested third option. And like I said, this comes from an ex-British diplomat. So let's carry on. It is said or suggested that King Charles owns a number of properties in the United States. Some apparently he inherited, and some of those he actually sold or are in the process of selling. Some allegedly, apparently, he kept, and some he bought himself over a period of time. It is said that the Queen owned private property in the United States and Canada. For example, a farm in Kentucky, property in Mississippi, and prime real estate in Park Avenue, New York City, etc. Now, in this investigation, a number of people said it is absolute nonsense because according to the Treaty of Paris in 1783, there would be no land owned by the royal family in the United States, and all the land owned by the royal family was indeed confiscated. Well, you see, the problem here is, number one, language, and the confusing state of property the royal family are custodians of, and property they own via their duchies and properties they own in their private capacity. So let's make it as simple as possible. The Queen, and now the King, regularly stayed or now stay in Windsor Castle. The royal family act as owners, but if the monarchy is to be abolished tomorrow, the doors to Windsor Castle will close on the royal family, and it will likely become a museum, a residential housing scheme, offices, or whatever, because Windsor Castle, Buckingham Palace, etc., does not physically belong to the king or the royal family. It belongs to the Crown Estate. The Crown Estate's money goes to the government before some of it goes to the king. The properties owned by the Duchy of Lancaster and the Duchy of Cornwall is basically the same thing. Currently, the Duchy of Lancaster belongs to the king, and its profit goes to the king to be used and spent at his discretion. But if the monarchy is to be abolished tomorrow, the properties, say, owned by the Duchy of Lancaster will be redistributed. However, Balmoral and Sandringham physically belongs to Charles, who inherited it from his mother. Balmoral is actually built, or was actually built, by Prince Albert and Queen Victoria. The same applies to Sandringham. It was bought outright by Prince Albert Edward, who later became King Edward VII, and eventually Charles again inherited it from his mother. Now, should the monarchy be abolished, the king or the sovereign will not automatically lose these two properties because it is privately owned. And the same would apply to the property Charles owns in Transylvania, Romania. It is his private property and he will remain its owner. The Duchy of Lancaster, however, does not own any property outside Britain. The Duchy of Lancaster owns property in England and Wales, a commercial property portfolio in London, a portfolio of financial investments, and a small residential portfolio. And that is why Charles and royals before them owned and has a portfolio of properties outside of England. Because if the monarchy is ever removed, they will still be rich and own properties elsewhere, including a number of properties in England and Wales. It also explains why the properties are registered in a blind trust, because in 2017 it was actually revealed that the Duchy of Lancaster held investments in two offshore financial centres, the Cayman Islands and Bermuda. At the time, both British territories, but after a huge stink, the offshore investments were exited in 2019. So now hopefully you will understand the difference the monarchy and or the Crown Estate, the Duchy of Lancaster, etc., cannot own property overseas. But the Queen, as Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor, and the King as Charles Philip Arthur George Windsor, however, can. Except that it will never be registered to, say, CPAG Windsor, but instead will be registered to the likes of Real Residential Estate Trust, like 765 Rockbridge Road, or then Harry and Meghan's Montecito home. Okay, so what is the truth? Is Harry staying in one of Charles's private properties in New York City, or is he staying at that $6 million property allegedly bought for the Canadian Consul General? I think the king and courtiers better start realizing that the people are sick of all the BS and lies. The people are tired of all the money still being spent on a traitor to king and country. And yes, friends, this is not the end of it. There is indeed more. But for today, this is enough. I'll see you in the next one, so please take good care of yourselves. Until then, bye.